shape culture itself. And I'll get to that point in a little bit. They understood that power doesn't just come from laws. It comes from the stories people tell about who belongs and who doesn't. They built networks that look local but operate globally. Think tanks, influencers, parent groups, and faith-based alliances, moving in lockstep across borders with shared messages and deep funding. They've defined the conversation, unfortunately, before we even entered it. And phrases like gender ideology, parental rights, protecting women's sports, they didn't just appear by accident. They were engineered to sound like moral common sense. And by the time we respond, unfortunately, we're already debating on their terms. We are already using their dictionary. So their playbook is clear. Lead with emotion, not evidence. Frame issues around values everyone recognizes: family, faith, safety. Use relatable messages and messengers, parents, teachers, pastors, who can make their cause feel authentic and close to home. And their version of family is far from neutral, and this is what I find very dangerous, and we've heard it discussed during the conference. Their version of family is narrowly defined: heteronormative, patriarchal, and exclusionary. The anti-rights actors use religion and tradition to dictate who counts as moral or deserving, while dehumanizing those who don't fit that mold. So queer people, single mothers, young women asserting their autonomy are all portrayed as threats to a manufactured ideal of family that we know never truly existed. They pair that moral narrative with political machinery, lobbying, disinformation, and infiltration of courts, education systems, and international institutions. And for those of us in the US, unfortunately, we're seeing this unfold in real time. Their power lies in coordination and alignment, a transnational network operating through faith, politics, and media, often amplified by rising nationalism and geopolitical tensions. And we've seen across history and regions that restricting reproductive freedom, especially women's and gender-diverse people's bodily autonomy, it has been a political strategy to enforce social control. When leaders or movements regulate who can have children, when, and under what circumstances, they aren't just controlling individual choices. They're shaping the structure of families, labor, citizenship, and belonging. In that sense, when you control bodies, you control societies, their demographies, their social order, even their political future. So meanwhile, what's happening in our community? I'm going to be very, very direct. The SRHR community faces some real constraints: fragmented efforts, short-term funding, and language that too often speaks inward. We lead with acronyms an unmet need, not with values and belonging. We rely on explanation and get mired in technicalities when what people need is connection. We try to convince when what we actually need to do is connect. We defend rights when we should be defining them on our terms. So the work ahead for us isn't just about polishing our messages, although that is important. It's about building real capacity. Anti-rights actors built an ecosystem designed to influence culture long before it touched policy. We need to do the same. We need to invest in communications capacity where the work actually happens. within national and local movements. We need to train and resource advocates to lead their own narrative work and create coordination across movements so we can act early, not react later. But I know we can look at these realities and think, well, we will never catch up, but that's not true. I want us all to remember that our strength, it doesn't come from institutions. It comes from people. It comes from us. It comes from those of us who keep showing up, adapting, and pushing forward. And I'm a prime example of that. My agency was unexpectedly dismantled in January, but I'm still here. And thank you. Well, I share this applause with many of my USAID colleagues and friends and implementing partners who are here today and did whatever they could to be here because they wanted to be here. So we all need to show up and keep showing up. And before I introduce our panel and go into Q&A, I do want to end with a note of hope. I want you to take this hope with you as you go back to your countries and your communities and fight the good fight for reproductive health and rights and freedom. And I want to share a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." So we need to believe in our community and our collective strength. The past is important to teach lessons, but for us, it isn't prologue. It's not a preface of what's to come. Our future is still being written, and it is ours to define. And I'm a little bit of an optimist at heart, so I truly believe our future will be built by people like us, people like Natalia, young leaders who are in the audience and have been very active throughout the conference. It will be built by them, it will be built by us, because we believe that dignity, choice, and women's rights and autonomy are not negotiable. And with that, I'm thrilled to turn to our panel, leaders who are not certainly waiting for permission to imagine that future, but boldly, fiercely, and actively creating it. So thank you to my panel for being here. I'm going to transition here and make brief introductions. So I'll start to the left of me with my good friend, Nabiha Kazi-Hutchins. Nabiha Kazi-Hutchins is the president and CEO of PAI, which for nearly 60 years has championed sexual and reproductive health and rights as central to health equity, gender equality, and economic progress. Nabiha brings over 25 years of experience in movement building, policy advocacy, and community engagement across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Before joining PAI, Nabiha founded Humanitas Global and held senior roles with the Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative and leadership role at Fleishman Hillard. Like me, she was born in Pakistan and raised in Mexico. I wasn't raised in Mexico. I'm a foreign service brat, so I was raised all over the world. And Nabiha now lives in Washington, D.C. Next to Nabiha, moving on to Dr. Alvaro Bermejo. Dr. Bermejo is the Director General of the International Planned Parenthood Federation, IPPF, and he leads one of the world's largest sexual and reproductive health networks. He has over 20 years of experience in global health, HIV and AIDS, and humanitarian policy. And before joining IPPF, he directed programs at the Children's Investment Fund, CIF, and led the International HIV/AIDS Alliance, expanding its reach and influence across multiple countries and regions. And next to Alvaro, we have Janice. Oh, Janice, I hope I don't pronounce your name. Mispronounce it, Paraquet. Okay. Whew. Janice Paraquet is the Chief Executive Officer of the PRISM Initiative, bringing 3 decades of experience in nonprofit management, philanthropy, and campaign strategy. She has held senior leadership roles with the Urban Land Institute Foundation, Represent Us, and the Nature Conservancy, where she oversaw global fundraising and partnerships. A native of the Philippines, Janice has worked at the intersection of family planning, maternal health, and gender equality, and is deeply committed to building coalitions that advance women's autonomy and opportunity worldwide. And next to Janice is someone who needs no introduction to the ICFP community. He's a hero and a mentor to so many of us. Owen, I'm so happy that you were able to join us today. And for those who don't know, and I don't know why you don't know, Owen is a senior scientist emeritus at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and the former director of the William H. Gates Senior Institute for Population and Reproductive Health. And he has been responsible for many, many years in organizing, promoting, and holding ICFP and getting the community together. And each ICFP has been bigger, better than the one before. And Owen has more than 30 years of leadership experience in public health, having designed and managed over 300 advocacy, behavior change, and communications programs across more than 50 countries. And Owen also chairs the International Steering Committee of the International Conference on Family Planning. And then last but definitely not least is Natalia de Leon Teo. Natalia is the Communications and Media Coordinator for FP 2030 Latin America and Caribbean Hub. She's originally from Guatemala, and she has worked across international organizations, NGOs, and advocacy campaigns focused on gender equality, intersectionality, and youth engagement. Natalia holds degrees in political science, communication, and conflict resolution, and brings a strong commitment to advancing SRHR through inclusive, youth-driven approaches across the region. Thank you all for being here. So, you know, it happens that when you run back to your hotel to print, you forget to bring your questions with you, but they are on my laptop. But I know what to ask Nabiha, so I will start with that, and we'll share a short video, and then I will hopefully have my Q&A with me. Yeah. So Nabiha, first of all, congratulations on PAI at 60. It's an amazing year. I think Nabiha deserves a round of applause. And all of you guys and Nabiha's team. So Nabiha, why don't you, because I see the clicker, why don't you just start setting us up for a really important point you wanted to make about who is our real audience and how do we approach them. And while Nabiha shares that, and we watch a video that celebrates 60 years of PAI and was produced by Nabiha and her team, I will just run off the stage and get my laptop. Over to you.
Good morning. Muy buenos días. Gracias por estar. Thank you, Rabab, for that introduction. I have to recognize the fact and reinforce what Rabab has shared, that USAID as the mechanism to fund family planning and reproductive health, by and large, the institution is no more. The funding has been gutted. I do have to ask all of you, who do you think, let's rewind for a minute, who do you think was the biggest funder of family planning and reproductive health in absolute dollars in the world? Somebody shout that out. And let's rewind. Let's pretend that we're not in 2025. Who was it? USAID. Okay. I'm actually going to say that answer is wrong. It wasn't USAID, and it wasn't the US government. It was the American people. It was the American taxpayer. And the reason I bring this up is we have to always ask ourselves, who are we stewarding? And are the ultimate people we are stewarding, are they the ones who still care about our issue area, or what issue area do they care about that we can integrate into? So to set the record straight, over 60% of Americans believe that family planning and reproductive freedom is important. Close to 90% of Americans believe that 1% of their taxpayer dollar should go to support the health and vitality of women, of young people, of communities that are living in conditions that are not just. Keep that with you, because while the US government in this current state has decided that family planning and reproductive health is not life-saving and not essential, the American people do not agree with that. And if you want further proof, if we look state after state after state in the United States, and by the way, PAI does not do state-based advocacy for US-based services. We are solely focused on ensuring that the United States be a leader and a good steward of global sexual and reproductive health and rights. We have never taken money from the US government. At 60 years, I'm so proud it has happened because of the partnership with each and every one of you. But I share this because we hold the US government accountable. But we also have to make sure we case make of what to those who make our work possible. And so if I go back and we look at the US landscape, state after state, and the vast majority of states where there were ballot initiatives to reverse the right to a safe abortion, to restrict comprehensive sexuality education, to combat reproductive freedoms, time and time again, voters in the United States, in their states, voted to protect those reproductive freedoms. So why is it, then, that those at the state level want to protect those reproductive freedoms at home? Do you think they would be okay with their elected officials denying those same rights and privileges for communities abroad? I'd say they wouldn't. And so who do we talk to? What I want to talk about is this campaign that we have launched. It is a soft launch right now, so you all are among the very first to see it. And I want to provide some context. This is not, I hope it inspires you, but with all due love and respect, you are not the audience. The audience for this campaign with this short teaser video, and there's much more to it, are the American people, and a very specific segment of the American people. It is American people who care about rights and freedoms, who voted in the great state of Kansas to protect the constitutional right to a state abortion, who also probably care about the rights of other people abroad, and it is young people in the United States. College students, it is young professionals. Why those two audiences? Those who have the disposable income, the disposable time to fight for rights in their own communities, have the disposable time, energy, voice, income to fight for those same rights abroad. And young people, we need to have them at the table in a way that goes beyond, did you show up on a stage to speak? And I'm being very clear about that because we've had a lot of young, incredible talent be at ICFP, and they're putting out incredible knowledge and content. We need to activate them because they can do so much more with policy change, with holding governments accountable. So I want to show the video now. If you will watch it, but just keep those audiences in mind as two audiences that we have to bring into our tent to fight for global reproductive health and rights just as much as they're fighting for those rights in the United States. Si pueden poner el video, por favor.
Her name could be Maria, or Serena, or Jasmine. A girl forced out of school because she's pregnant. A mother risking her life to give birth without care. A young person left vulnerable because their school denies them sex education. A teenager in Texas denied an abortion and told she has no choice. Politicians in the US are stripping away the freedoms of women and girls here and abroad, making decisions about if, when, and how she controls her own body without her. But when she has the power to decide, when she has the freedom to choose if and when to become pregnant, her education, her career, her opportunities change. And it doesn't just change her life. It changes her family, her community, their futures, her body, her choices, her power, all worth fighting for. Stand with her, because freedom starts with her. Learn more and join the movement at freedomstartswithher.org.
So that is the starter of a conversation with people who we think will care about our issue. It is not the only thing. There is substance behind it, but it's the way to inspire and to invite people in a way that we hope will make them feel good about joining our movement and not giving them scare tactics or angry messages, but really approaching it with love.
That's perfect. And I just, for my friends in the back, I don't see the timer counting down, so if you could please get it back up, that would be wonderful. So Nabiha, we're going to stick to time, but I do have a quick follow-up question for you. Let's get into it. So you started your career at one of the world's largest strategic communications firms. I worked there for a little bit too. And then you grew and ranked to multi-million-dollar initiatives for clients across healthcare, pharma, and agriculture. But we in nonprofit don't have those kinds of budgets to make toward new and different audiences. So what lessons do we replicate from the Freedom Starts With Her campaign, and perhaps even from the large-scale initiatives you have done prior in your career? So tell us.
Great question, and we may not have multi-millions of dollars as in my early life, so many clients had to really case make and reach many audiences. But we have strategy, we have vision, and we have a clear call to action. And I think that's where we ground ourselves. And that is actually the grounding of this campaign as well. We cannot do all things to all people. We also can't force our message on people who may not be receptive to that message in this moment. We should still fight for it, but we need to be very creative in terms of the way in. I would say a couple of things. With limited resources and limited time, but not limited heart, we have to start with the end in mind. What is it that we want to achieve? And those are strategic policy outcomes. They're hard outcomes in terms of what is the access that we want to unlock? What are the rights that we need to advance? So those really tough things that each person in this room and at this conference is fighting for day in and day out, all right? And if we are very clear on that, then we have to think about, all right, who actually has the greatest influence to be able to activate toward that change, or inspire that change, or push that change? And so I always say, have a big goal in mind and have a big ambition in mind, but let us make sure that we are prioritizing our audiences, understand what motivates that audience, because it may not be our issue area yet, and then be very focused in how you engage with them, how you communicate to them, how you brand to them, and how you bring them along. And so that is what we do with limited time, limited resources. Don't try and be everything to all people. Just as I said, the Freedom Starts With Her campaign, with all love and respect, it's not for you. I hope you will become champions of it if you're fighting for US support for global reproductive health and rights. But we were very strategic and intentional about saying, who are the audiences? What is the move that we want to make? And I will tell you, the move that we want to make with this campaign is to ensure that the United States re-engages from a financial and from a policy perspective in preserving and advancing the sexual and reproductive health and rights around the world for communities around the world. I believe that will happen with people-powered movements, and it is also very important because we want to make sure that despite these regressions in our current administration, that it does not set the example of the way forward for countries around the world. So remember, as you are developing your own cases for domestic resource mobilization, as you case make to the agricultural leaders, to the education leaders, to your ministries of finance, to your ministries of foreign affairs, it may not be the entry with SRHR, but there are other entries. And think about it through that lens and be very focused in terms of who can inspire them and what movement you need behind your message to make that change not only happen, but for it to be sustained.
Thank you, Nabiha, and amen to the US re-engaging in global health. May we all live to see that day. So Alvaro, my next question is for you. So there's a powerful statement on the IPPF website that is especially relevant to our discussion today. I will share it with everyone, and then I encourage you to go to the website and see where this statement is mentioned, and Alvaro will talk about that in a little bit. And that is that words don't just reflect change, they drive it. So Alvaro, you've put that principle into practice using insights from message testing and research to build campaigns that counter misinformation and engage what you've called the movable middle. So how is IPPF applying these learnings to mobilize support globally?
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Rabbi. And to understand that question, let me say 2 words on the framing, which you've done very nicely at the beginning. But I think it's important, because we haven't heard it much in this conference, that we remember that what we call the anti-rights is a movement that's there to erase particular groups of people, to erase our organizations, to erase and destroy democratic institutions, and to consolidate patriarchy and authoritarian power. That's the framing that we're looking at it from an IPPF point of view. And it is in that context that I want to try and answer this question of how do we break that echo chamber and speak to them that while we're meeting here, are occupying our legislatives, are occupying our executives, are winning elections, getting into the Supreme Court. How do we respond to that type and drive change through our words? And I'm going to choose the first moment where I think IPPF started changing in its approach to this, which was the Ireland referendum of 2018, when it was put to the people to change the constitution to liberalize the law that restricted abortion. We had by then already realized at IPPF, or were just beginning to realize, that the type of work you needed to do in the corridors of power was very different from the type of work you would need to do to win hearts and minds on the streets and win a referendum. That we would need to invest in a new type of knowledge and expertise that we didn't have at that time. And we partnered with Berkeley International Framing Institute to be able, and started to learn about neuro-linguistic programming, and looking then at how do we bring the research in to understand not just the evidence about our message, the evidence about abortion and what science says about abortion, but really the research into understanding the audience that we could move in that voting, those that were already fixed and we would be able to do nothing about. It happened at the time, a couple of years earlier, and this is just as a matter of context of Ireland so people understand it. It's a strong Catholic tradition in Ireland, where the death of Savita Halappanavar, a 30-year-old dentist who was 17 weeks pregnant and miscarrying. She and her husband had repeatedly requested an abortion because the miscarriage was inevitable and her health was deteriorating, but the request had been denied because there was still fetal heartbeat present. She developed sepsis and she had died of cardiac arrest. We did the research just before the referendum, as the campaign started. It was very clear that those that were opposed, that we would not be able to change, was less than 20%. That is quite common in most countries. There is a hardcore group that you will not be able to change. They're very noisy. They're usually not more than 20%. There was a bigger group of people who actually supported the yes in the referendum, to change the referendum. They were strong supporters. It was a different campaign for that. That's where you do things like this. There was then what we call the movable middle, people that were not yet decided or that defined themselves as moderate supporters or moderate opposers. They still needed to be convinced, let's say. The research showed, and I want to say it, the research was very, very clear. That's why it needs to be done. That rights, choice, economic arguments would all lose the referendum. There was no way they would move that movable middle. What could do in that environment were the values of care and compassion. If it focused on care and compassion in this situation, a Catholic country with this recent death that had happened, it could move it. And privacy was the other issue. Most Irish people thought that this was an issue that was not for the state to determine, but that it was a private decision between the doctors and the mothers, or the potential mothers, the women who were seeking the abortion. This was what the research was saying. It also showed that if you wanted to reach that movable middle with this message of care, compassion, and privacy, the best medium was not those who we initially thought. It was actually the mothers who had already had an abortion. That came up as group number one, most trusted by this audience. Number two, the healthcare professionals. This was what the evidence was showing. Not the youth activists, not us from IPPF, but these groups. I won't tell you the result. You can look it up and learn more about the results of that referendum. But it was a landslide, or a significant majority that decided for care and compassion to vote yes and to change the law. The other very quick example I wanted to give was later, Poland 2022. The context there, very different. A country where, since the fall of communism, the biggest demonstrations, 4 million people had come onto the streets, mostly women and young people, had demonstrated for abortion, to change the abortion law in a country that was, I was going to say very restrictive, I would say where it was nearly impossible to get a safe and legal abortion. These women and young people hardly turned up at the elections. This was a general election where the Justice Party was the favorite to win, and where the progressive pro-European opposition was a minority. And the progressive parties had sort of given up on young people and partly on women because their turnout in the elections in 2019 had been very low. Our partners there, Polish Women's Strike, had led the demonstrations for abortion. And they decided they were not going to campaign for any party because all the polls showed that these young people and these women, they actually did not care for any of the parties. They did not believe that any of the political parties would do anything that mattered for them. That was the environment. And Polish Women's Strike came out with this campaign that said, we know you do not believe in any of the parties, but you do believe in abortion. You showed it on the streets. Vote for abortion. And let me just give you the results very quickly in there. The voters' turnout for women reached record high, 12% higher than it was in the previous election, to get to 73.2 turned out to vote. And for young people, the increase was 22%, with 68% turning up to vote. At the end of the elections, in the exit polls, 18% of those who voted said they had voted for abortion. The progressive parties won by 2%.
Wow. Thank you, Alvaro. And And so this shows you why good strategic data is so important. Janice, we talked about that in the PRISM presentation yesterday, that when you need to convince, you have data. And I do really encourage you to go on the IPPF website and do some research. It's fascinating to see how people vote, how they think, and the point that Alvaro made about care and some of those human emotions that they seem to champion, and not language that can be amorphous or alienated. Alvaro, before I go to Janice with my question, very quickly, can you share for organizations, and there's many of them at this conference, the ones that don't have large budgets to conduct large research or run campaigns like Words to Win, what can they do, where can they turn to resources to run their own campaigns that can have effect?
Thank you, Rabab. And that's a good example that you've just mentioned. Words to Win campaign, one led from our Nairobi regional office with the members from the African region. And this is a campaign that really looks to emphasize the power of language and storytelling, to move away from stigmatizing and minimizing terms. Examples include shifting from abortion services to abortion care, and using terms that clearly name violence as violence rather than love or jealousy, and to use value-based framing to mobilize and inspire, again, that middle, or even mobilize supporters that are already with us. We do that in a way that can be picked up, in an unbranded way that can be picked up by any organization that wants to work with that and with the power of storytelling. We can help and make design and all other things available. We believe that it is in collaboration to reach these groups of people that is needed. And I'd really encourage other large organizations that have the privilege of having budgets like we do and teams like we do to do more unbranded stuff and to participate and collaborate with other organizations that can then use that. And particularly now that we need much more intelligence on understanding the framing and the strategies of the anti-rights, we can't all set that capacity to do that up. So the more that a few do it and share those results with the rest, PI has been good at doing that in the past as well, the more we can advance together.
Thank you. I definitely agree, working together as a community, not against each other. And I know we've typically seen our issues as siloed, but we don't have time for that. We all need to sing from the same songbook, and Janice said that beautifully yesterday, that work together, not against each other. And then how do we empower all of our community? Well, that's why PRISM Initiative is here. Very exciting. So my question, Janice, to you is that in your role as CEO of PRISM, you will work with high net worth, ultra high net worth donors. And they sometimes may not see investing in women and girls as a priority. They may not even think of women and girls when they're thinking of investing. So what approaches have most effectively shifted donors' mindsets from traditional philanthropy to strategic, pinpoint investment that can drive lasting social change and economic impact?
Thanks, Rabab. And thank you all. I am new in my role, so for folks who are unaware or don't yet know about PRISM, let me just take 30 seconds here and tell you a little bit about it. We were created in 2023 by Sif, Gates, Hewlett, and Packard. We're modeled after another organization that had previously been set up for climate change. And our mandate is to bring brand new philanthropists. We're focused on ultra high net worth to make investments in this sector. And I think for too long, reproductive health, I understand that our work is really focused on women and girls, and yet when you limit it to only that, and you think about what our mandate is, which is to bring brand new people, it limits, it narrows, and frankly, now is the time to broaden the tent. We have to bring everyone in. So if there are 3,500 billionaires in the world, and only 1,600 of them give to anything, and this sector probably benefits from, let's just say, less than 10. The only way you broaden that is by frankly talking about not just women and girls, but boys, men, families, societies. Frankly, the work of the sector is foundational to all the things that philanthropists care about. So when we meet with brand new folks, we're never in the top 5 of their philanthropic priorities. We're frankly further down. However, when you learn what they care about and where they're putting their money, and where is it? It's going to places like climate change, civil society, global security, strong economies. You all have this. You know it. And then when you explain that this sector, yeah, they will never get to their goals unless they're including this sector as part of their investments, they get it. So philanthropy, just so you all know, this is really heart and mind. When you meet with a sophisticated billionaire wanting to make strategic investments to go move on their priorities, they link everything. And so our ability to link to all these other issues, we are not a cause, we are a catalyst.
That's amazing. And And Janice said yesterday in her presentation that she needs support from the entire SRHR community. Come with your bold ideas. So she has those bold ideas to present forward to the individuals that she'll be reaching out to. So I have a follow-up question. And I think, Janice, you answered some of it, that when you go and have conversations with these individuals, some of them with lots of money, and they're trying to figure out where to invest it to make a difference in the world, they're not thinking of women and girls. Women and girls are not first, second, third, fourth. They are way down the list of priorities. So what is your strategy, or what are you thinking when you have these conversations to show them that investing in women and girls is essential? It's not exceptional.
So again, I don't, you know, when you meet donors where they are, so I don't pitch. I think folks already, most of the times, when you meet with a philanthropist, so first, they have a giving mindset. You don't have to make the case. I think what we have to do better is, so language matters. Alvaro talked about this. How do we make our language be more inviting? And the use of data really matters, to be guided by data rather than ideology. I think about where wealth really sits for the world and who holds it. And first knowing your audience before you walk in. I understand that it's all about values. And believe me, for big, bold philanthropists, it is about values. But folks, I heard someone say this to me. It was president of a very large foundation, and they said we should not let the narcissism of our small differences prevent us from making progress. I think we have so much in common with these philanthropists, and so when we meet them and use the language that they need to hear, this is a hard sector, by the way. I've had to, since I took this role in January, I have had to learn so much about the complexity of the work, and so much of what we do has been really simplifying it and getting people to understand our ecosystem. That way they can enter in. And I think people aren't giving here not because they don't care, it's because they don't know. And the title of this talk is an echo chamber. When you only speak to us, like this room, and we celebrate our wins, then it's only us. And my mandate is to get everyone caring about us. So I need help from all of you. How do we connect to education, health? You actually already have it, but it's the way we frame it. And I think being strategic about how we use language to reach these next generation of supporters who will be with us. I invite all of you.
Thank you. And I cannot emphasize enough, and Janice said it beautifully, knowing your audience, know before you go into the room who you're talking to. And
Proyecto Mirar y la propuesta es lo que es la política de salud sexual y reproductiva.
Hey guys, can we fix that? All right, I'm going to keep moving. The point I was trying to make was is it okay for me to?
Anterior y en este momento no se puede ser parte de la rendición de cuentas que les
¿Se oye la traducción?
solicitamos de acceso a la información pública en las distintas provincias, monitoreos de instituciones y información que circula en los medios de comunicación. Son ejemplos de los reportes. Primera página del artículo.
Una mujer está hablando.
Is it okay? Yes. Great. Thank you. Before I move on to Owing, and I'm going to ask my friends in the back to change the slide, and just going back to Janice's point about using the right words for the right audience, and then connecting our issues to some of the bigger global issues that people can identify with: democracy, climate change, stability, economic prosperity. It's very important to flip the frame. And so we have a toolkit for you that has examples of how you actually do that. And it is going to help you as you go back to your communities and your homes to revisit your messaging and how you do external communications with internal and external audiences, and tailor them so that our messages become more relatable. And going back to what I said earlier, that the anti-rights movement, they are coordinated and they use very simple, identifiable language. Sometimes it sounds like it's morally right, and words matter when we communicate about our issues. So please do scan it. It will make me very happy if you use it, and please pass it on to your friends and colleagues. It is a free resource and it is for everybody in our field. So thank you for humoring me with this pitch. And now I'm going to move on to Oying. Oying, thank you again for being here. So Oying has guided ICFP through many cultural and political shifts. You've seen it all. And every time we've had a conference, there is something going on. But Oying has been able to not just gather the community together, but also keep the focus on our issues and keep the conversation going. And he's done it beautifully and elegantly and seamlessly for many, many years. So Oing, I want to ask you specifically that, have you ever seen, after many of the ICFPs and the external communications that comes out of it, has it had a real tangible result or effect that you can point to? And I'll give an example. It could be a policy change. It could be increased funding toward our issues, or it could be measurable public support. Was it all? Was it some? Am I missing something? So share with us, and I ask this question because I want everyone to know that when we show up at these ICFPs and we go back with vigor to continue the message, there is a lot of planning, coordination, and historical knowledge that goes behind it, and Oing has so much of it. So Oing, take it away.
Thank you, Rubab. Before I answer your question, let me just say this. There was once a philosopher, I forgot the name. The philosopher said, language conditions thought. I believe in that. If you examine my entire background, I come from the communication field. So to me, having been brought up in the communication field, both on the intellectual and on the practice side, to communicate, you need to understand who your audience is. That's the basic. You can't get away from that. Okay, so I joined the movement straight out of college. And I joined a very, very powerful organization. And I became the director of communication at the time. And when I presented to my board, consisting of 9 cabinet ministers, you're talking about a 25-year-old guy presenting to 9 cabinet ministers what I thought was a brilliant strategy. I called it at the time programmed mass communication. I was kind of like, looked down and said, what are you doing? You're trying to sell family planning like candy? And from that on, there was no more discussion. I was killed in that first round, okay? Of course, that program mass communication has become social marketing, okay? So a group of World Bank people came in. You know, at the time, I came from the Philippines. Every time the bunch of people from the World Bank come, the government stops. Everybody caters to the need of the World Bank. And I presented to the World Bank. And they thought that the strategy was the best strategy they've ever seen anywhere in the world. And I said, well, you tell that to my board. And they did, and it was approved. So I used the outside people to get it approved, okay? So I like to tell stories to make my point. At 5 o'clock in the morning one time, I was still in the Philippines, I saw a very, very famous and very, very influential cardinal. Philippines is 85% Catholic, okay? So I approached him and I said, Your Excellency, I said, I think we are relatives. My father tells me that we are relatives. Then he said, oh, who is your father? So I mentioned, oh, my father said, oh, yeah, we are relatives. So where are you now, you know? And I said, I'm with Johns Hopkins University. And then he looked at me and he said, what is a member of my family doing with such a sinful organization like Johns Hopkins, promoting family planning in our country? What has happened to you, my dear? I said, Your Excellency, what we do, protect health, saves lives. And let me tell you why. I got my 5-minute version of the evidence to present. I don't know whether I had any impact, but that was what happened, okay? Now, moving forward, I happened to direct for almost 20 years all the flagship programs of USAID and communication while I was at Hopkins. for almost 20 years. So I've been all over the world. So let me tell you one story. When I was in Nigeria and working with, I have Nigerian friends here, working with the famous Professor Ladipo, the pioneer of modern family planning in Nigeria in the early 80s. So we went around and we met a grandmother who said, oh, I'm supportive of your idea. And let me tell you why. For hundreds and hundreds of years, we Nigerians have been practicing child spacing, but we did not have access to modern medicine. I'm telling my grandchildren that we're so lucky now that we can still practice child spacing with modern medicine, which are safe and effective. Wow. That became the first television spot ever created and was broadcast in Nigeria at the time. See, the language was so powerful. How can you disagree with that? Now, going back to the Philippines, I was already out of the Philippines trying to help with a communication strategy. How do you develop that in a way that you have everybody with you? So brilliantly, they were able to come up with something which I think is still incredible, with a 99, almost 100% approval at the time. You know what they had was very simple. It was a visual of two kids. You cannot really see whether it's a boy or a girl, but two kids. And the slogan was, if you love them, plan for them. If you love them, plan for them. Who would disagree with that? Who would disagree with that very powerful idea about your own children? Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that communication is so important in our field that we have to understand who we're talking with. So now one last example of this. I was talking to was presenting to a very, very high-level body about the need for family planning. And I was mostly using the data and the evidence and health. And a billionaire in that body said, what are you talking about? You know pretty well that the economic argument for family planning is as equally important, if not more powerful, than the health argument. Why are you not using it? So I said, there are parts of our community that as soon as you use the economic argument, you will be accused of coercion. We are trying to avoid that. I said, well, what kind of community is that? That your most powerful argument you're not using. So that's why we come back again to the concept of demographic dividend. Because again, the concept of demographic dividend allows you to discuss many of these economic benefits without, going beyond the issue of coercion. Just like what Rockefeller Foundation did at this time, during the time of Steve Sinding there, again, trying to navigate the politics, what is it that unites us all? And it came out in the research. It's unmet need. If you focus on unmet need, nobody will disagree with you, okay? So, going to ICFP in short, ICFP was conceived from the very beginning. It's like, we have a vision, but let's start small. So it was called International Conference on Family Planning. But the vision was really for it to become the largest scientific meeting in the world on sexual reproductive health and rights. That was the vision at the time. But we started with small because we didn't even know whether people would come to an international conference on family planning. And this was in 2009 in Uganda. We were expecting we will be happy if we have 500 people. 1,000 people came, no more rooms for hotels. Everybody was happy that finally they were, all over the world, people were high-fiving each other, were embracing each other because the family planning agenda was off the global charts at that point in time. 40% decline in funding for international family planning at the time, okay? So ICFP itself is growing, as part of that movement, which gives us a huge strength that all of us can play. Many of us disagree with each other, but disagreement, sometimes tension is good. You know, we can sharpen our arguments as long as we belong to the same big tent and find that commonality that we just have learned, you know, in the last, if you're watching the US elections, it's affordability. They found that, you know. So let me stop there and we'll wait for your follow-up question.
I know we could stay here, and Owen has so many stories to tell. It's just fascinating to hear him about all the different ICFPs, and it's a testament to your leadership that we started at about 1,000, and we've had over 4,000 people at ICFPs, and even this one where we are in a very different and challenging environment. I think Phil shared at the opening ceremony, we had almost doubled the abstract submissions than we've ever had, and we still had over 3,000 people who came and joined us. Many more would have. Unfortunately, there were some visa issues. So it's fantastic that the community has grown.
So every year, Rabab, this is followed up by a survey. You will get the survey after this. And every survey that I have seen, I don't have access to the specific data. All of you who respond to the survey report some learning or some policy change that they were going to implement or will have implemented already as a result of this conference, okay? Including the funding, you know, that they have been able to secure. You know, it's all there. And by the way, you will be surprised that every ICFP, 70% of the participants are new. They have never been to an ICFP before. So every ICFP, 70% of the people are new. This is great. You know, that you have new people coming in, you know, coming back, you know. And that is, to me, in my opinion, the role of a platform like ICFP in terms of bringing everybody together, and we can debate, we can celebrate, we can talk, you know, we can have serious discussions in the corridor, you know, we can negotiate, you know, we can get funding, you can learn new things, you know, it sharpens our argument. That's what this is all about.
Thank you, Owen. So I'm looking at the clock, and we still have a few minutes, and I hope we can get at least a couple of minutes for Q&A. So I have two questions for Natalia. I'm going to maybe condense them, but I want you to have time to share some of your thoughts with us. So when we spoke earlier, you said something that stayed with me. Young people should be seen as change makers, not tokens. And we had a fantastic youth summit this past weekend. So Natalia, what key insights stood out for you, especially about how young people want to engage as co-designers and co-creators and leaders in shaping policies and programs related to their own health?
First of all, I want to emphasize how important equity is. I'm the last person on this panel. We were all designated 8 minutes, and because of everyone else's use of time, I only have 4 minutes.
No, you have full 8.
Panel.
Keep going.
What stood out to me during the youth summit is how loudly young people were saying we don't want to be included at the end, we want to co-design from the beginning. There is a huge difference in saying this was revised by youth versus this was co-created entirely with youth. At FP 2030, we've seen young people be treated as true partners and how this shifts everything. In Latin America and the Caribbean, our youth wave connects more than 400 people around the 18 countries, and they're not just participating, we're co-creating over 121 digital campaigns this year, reaching over 100,000 people every single month. You see, for me, that's youth creating impact at scale with creativity and relevance, using pop culture and using different avenues to really be able to engage with youth meaningfully. We're shifting our own narrative on our own terms. We also talk, and I know you brought this up, about issues like mental health, self-care, climate justice, and inclusion as key pillars during our youth summit. And so we're seeing how young people are connecting all of these. They understand the autonomy isn't about just reproductive choices, but it's about emotional well-being, community care, and the right to live in a healthy planet. It's all interconnected. I was especially touched by the intervention of one of my Youth Wave members, Alex. As a trans man, Alex highlighted his lived experiences and the intrinsic link between executing our sexual and reproductive rights and mental health, and how vital it is to connect those two. It also reminded me to Sergio Rego here. For a lot of those who do not know, Sergio Rego was a young Colombian man who in 2014 took his own life after suffering harassment and discrimination at his school because of his sexual orientation. His story brought to light how prejudice-based violence profoundly affects mental health of young people and violates their sexual and reproductive rights. Today, his legacy reminds us that education must be safe, free, and a diverse space where loving and being who you are is never grounds for punishment. This is something that was deeply emphasized at the Youth Summit. His story brought to life that prejudice-based violence affects the mental health of young people in the way it violates our sexual and reproductive rights as well. This reminds us that we need to shape how this generation leads, centering empathy, inclusion, and collective care as a form of resistance. So in practice, it looks like youth designing advocacy campaigns can blend art, care, and activism. It's the fact that climate and mental health sessions are at the same table as family planning and bodily autonomy, and it's redefining leadership as collaborative rather than hierarchical. And if I could offer one piece of advice to organizations, it's do more listening and do less tokenism. Create spaces where youth are truly shaping agendas, not just validating them, because when young people lead, change becomes sustainable, inclusive, and deeply human.
Thank you, Natalia. She's amazing, and she is part of the FP 2030 actually leadership on the youth contingent. I highly recommend having a conversation with Natalia and hearing more about all the good work that she's doing on the social media front. So I'm glad you all are sticking with us. Please stay for a couple more minutes because I have a speed round question, 20, 30 seconds for our panelists. And I actually switched it up a little bit, so it's not the one that I shared when we had our briefing, but you will like this one. You will like this one. And I blame Nabiha for encouraging that. But the question is, it's very relevant, actually. So the question is, we've been talking about building a community, looking outside our echo chamber, bringing others into the fold, maybe looking for money in different places that we haven't thought of, and making alliances with groups that we haven't thought of. So based on where you sit, very quickly, who should we have at the table that is not included?
I'm giving it to my sister Natalia to go first.
Thank you. Thank you. So for me, I understand that a lot of these conferences have a lot of very systematic and bureaucratic processes that have been organizing for months. However, for me, I have seen a lack of representation when it comes to people with disabilities, and especially youth with disabilities. One of my delegates here, Arturo, he lives with a disability as well, and it's a frustration he has shared with me. Despite having a couple of advocacy spaces, it was really difficult to see the representation here at some points. And I also want to emphasize, for example, I had a live stage segment with him at the FPNN, and there was no ramp for him to be on stage. So even in the spaces we were able to open up for people with disabilities and youth with disabilities, there's still a lot of work to be done. Thank you.
Okay, 10 seconds. My dream is that we can all together, the reproductive health movement, the climate change movement, the women's rights movement, the health movement, can we all find a way to work together and develop what I would call a united force that the world does never change? Build it from one country to another, country by country, community by community. Let's identify those goalposts that we can all agree upon, and let's revolutionize the way forward in terms of what we can do.
Yes. All right, folks, if we can do that, then we bring all the philanthropists together. And philanthropy is changing right now. There is transfer of generational wealth happening, so that's next gen. New female philanthropists emerging, but really, philanthropy still sits with old white men. So we need to bring them in. All right.
I mean, I'm going to say, as I would, they're criminalized groups that they're not at the table because they're behind bars or they're dead. I haven't seen at this conference too many sex workers using this, sitting here. I haven't seen too many incarcerated women sitting here. I haven't seen too many transgender people sitting here. They're the ones that we need to listen to. Yes, we need to listen to philanthropies and billionaires and this and that later. Let's listen to these first, and let's get them out of jail. Let's keep them alive.
From my vantage point, first of all, I want to say I want to make sure that we protect this echo chamber. And I did not come from this sector, but I've benefited incredibly from the knowledge and the expertise and the longstanding commitment. And despite all of the shifts, I do hope that we can keep this echo chamber alive and well. Who I would want to bring in the wonky terms, they're called the grass tops influencers. I call them the beloved. I call them the first ladies. I call them the faith leaders. I call them the school teachers. Who is beloved to the individual who has the ability to support and advance global sexual and reproductive health and rights? Who matters to them in the quiet spaces? Who can validate that our work matters to them and invite those people in?
Thank you. So we have runners, I believe, hopefully, yes, in the audience. If not, raise your hand. We'll try to get a mic to you. But I do want to take a few minutes to have any questions sent this way if you'd like. So please raise your hand. And we've got one there. And while we get to the question, I just want to thank our amazing, wonderful panel. It was an honor and a privilege for me to be on this stage with you. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you. So we have a question? So we have no mic. Oh, do we? Oh, okay. Oh, she has it. Yeah.
Thank you. Gosh, I'm the first one to ask. Thank you so much for this. My name is Heba, and I'm a communications officer for so many years. And communications has been an expertise and a passion to me. So thank you so much for having this conversation. I will respond to your question, Rabab, and this is an ask to all those great panelists, an invitation to think about it. I think someone who should be on the table is the communications people. I don't know how many communications officers are in this room, but we, great, +1 here. And across sectors, I've been working in nonprofits, I've been working in private sector, and I've been working in the media. And across sectors, our voices has been neglected or ignored, or just, stayed at the end of the chain as the people who just get the message out. But we are more than that. We are a thought leader. We should co-create the process. We should not be only ones who just, craft a post or do the graphic. We are more than that. And please, if you're a CEO, if you're an executive director, please involve your comms teams. I would love to see more communications people speaking. I know that some of you already have a communications background. I was so thrilled when I saw Rabab. I was like, yes, finally. please, we are not just the gatekeepers of the messages. We are not just trying to change the narrative you are trying to change now. We can help you do it, so please include us.
Thank you. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm not going to argue. We've got someone right there with their hand up. Please, just going to try to move quickly.
Hello? Yeah. Hi, I'm Nicole. Thank you so much for this panel. It was absolutely amazing. I work for M&C Saatchi. We're a behavior change communications agency, and everything you've said on this panel has just been exactly what we've been advocating before, so it's been wonderful to hear. I wanted to ask, how do we end up balancing when we're trying to bring in new audiences and kind of having to reframe our message, and exactly as Janice was saying, in terms of bringing in the climate change examples, the education, advocating for why FP and SRHR are so important for wider movements, but then how do we balance it when we also need to kind of go on the attack and defend our messaging against anti-right movements as well, and kind of redefine that in the same space? So how do we balance those two things in terms of bringing in new audiences, but also making sure we're redefining our rights and what we're standing for at the same time?
Excellent question, and that's a challenge that we all have, right? So who would like to answer that? Oying?
Let me address the first question. Some time ago, I don't remember exactly when, a survey was conducted by one of the business magazines. I think it was Fortune. And what is the attribute that is the most important for any CEO? And I think they did a survey of more than 1,000 CEOs from across many regions worldwide. And I was stunned that actually at the conclusion, the ability to communicate was the #1 trait that the CEOs identified as the key attribute to lead a company.
Nabiha, do you want to?
Sure. First of all, very quickly, acknowledging the first comment on communications. I was speaking to a reporter today, and what you've said is spot on, and I said this to the reporter as a side conversation, is communications leaders, those who started their careers, whether that be an agency or nonprofits or private sector, media representatives, they are the analysts of our sector, the analysts of our movement, and are not just there for messaging and for writing the articles, but really have the pulse of what is happening in the landscape. So I fully agree. The question that was posed on how do we engage with the range of sectors and at the same time try and combat the anti-rights, I can speak from PAI's perspective. And I would say our power is the coalition work, and all of us are in coalition together, is it's not one entity that has to do all of it. So map out what are the needs and where are we uniquely going to show up toward a common agenda. And there might be entities that are much better equipped to fight the anti-rights and be bold and aggressive with countering that. And there might be others that say, we have strong portfolio of work and strong data that can case make effectively with those who are on the climate side. So I guess I would say, let us not get overwhelmed that one entity or a small group has to do all of it. This is the piece about collaboration, is saying, where are our strengths? And let's go with it, and let's divide and conquer our movement for good.
Thank you. Nabiha, Natalia, you want to add something?
Yes, thank you. It's actually so incredibly coincidental that all the questions posed right now centered a lot on communications, because that was the second question that I did not get to answer. So now I am happy to contribute a little bit about how we can do more of communications to integrate youth. Here in Latin America and the Caribbean, youth represent 46.9% of our population, which is an insane amount. If we do not effectively communicate with the youth, we're reducing 50% of our audience. And so what I said we had to do more of was listening with intention and communicating with youth, not at them. When we're talking about issues like sexual and reproductive health, climate justice, or gender equality, what really works is when communication becomes co-creation. It's not about translating institutional language into youth-friendly terms. It's about building messages that really reflect our realities, our humors, our struggles, our stories, and our hopes. When young people are invited to design, to lead, and to dream out loud, communications stop being a tool of outreach. They instead become a tool of transformation and power shifting. Thank you.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Alvaro, did you want to add?
Yes, thank you. And I add, without being a communications specialist and very much agreeing with the first question, but our experience on the second one, and I'll only speak for IPPF, has been that if we're talking about the public in a general way, right now, authenticity is valued very highly. And that our experience has definitely been that it is not through self-censorship and through trying to hide that you win the argument these days. That people expect authenticity, people want you to convey your message, to say who you are and put it clearly. Even if they then disagree on some parts, they will value that authenticity these days. That has certainly been our experience, and that self-censorship and trying to hide and just narrow the message to the 2 points that we will agree on everything has not proven to work. That has definitely been the IPPF experience, not just in the US, but around the world.
I just want to add one thing. We've talked so much about language, but images also matter. You have a colleague here who's executive director of a very big NGO, and we walked around different booths last night. I have to tell you, you know how many images we found of a family? One. And again, if we only show one part of what we represent, so people have to see themselves in us. If they don't, of all the things we represent, then we narrow ourselves. Okay.
Thank you, Janice. We have a question?
Kind of a comment, actually, and I think it ties together several things. I'm Ann Schulman from the Bergstrom Foundation. Possibly we're missing a funder on the stage, because I just want to point out that communications take money and take time, and coordinating communication takes money and takes time. And it's those in power, which unfortunately is often those with money, that need to move that agenda forward. And when it comes to the vision you presented of the connections between many sectors being a clear vision towards which we can move, it's incumbent on funders to not push, but offer ways to make collaborative grants. Thank you. That's it.
We will take one last quick question, because I know another session is about to start, and I'm so sorry we can't take as many as we'd like. So right over here, right over, oh, I'm sorry, after you, I guess? Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'm Carl. I've been working with communications for at least 35 years or so. And for about maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 years, we've been talking about the movable middle, as we've been doing today too. And I would actually like to see more of the movable middle at these kind of occasions or events also, to be able to, and also philanthropists actually, to not only talk about them and the strategies how to reach them, but also have conversations together with them and speaking to them and hearing from them how they look upon our work. Because at many of these events or occasions, we're so many people within the know, and we embrace each other, which is so nice and really important these days, of course. But I would also like to meet these people that we are talking about, not only through communications, because that's a bit hard, you know, it takes a lot of effort, it takes money, it takes resources, but also to start, you know, getting to know people, look them in the eyes and hear from them what they need from us to be able to maybe, you know, become part of the moment and start engaging with us.
Thank you. We have someone right here. I'm sorry, I don't want to point, but Unfortunately, this is the last comment or question, and then we have to go. I'm being told we have to go. Please go ahead.
Is there a possibility of expanding the culture of philanthropy? I have visited many low-resource countries, and every country has its bubble of rich people. How do we get to locally engage them?
Amen. Yes. So the culture of philanthropy is so strong in the U.S., but I'm going to tell you, this is what's happening. This is the movement of philanthropy. I actually think we're going to have more people stepping up. If you can just touch base with us, we have already, some folks have found us, local organizations, and it has to be high enough of an investment of our time, right? But billionaires are everywhere, folks, and they live in your countries too. And so understanding what they care about first before you craft your message to fit, that way you're not wasting your time. But there's a way to do it. And you have all the data and evidence. So thank you.
Thank you, Janice, and thank you again to our panel. A round of applause. And thank you all for coming, and please download the toolkit and use it. Thank you.